financial needs of a business go beyond tax and attest services. That's why CTBK goes beyond accounting services and offers outsourced solutions through their affiliation with CFO Solutions Plus. These additional services allow clients to focus on their operational and long-term strategic goals. Trust CTBK's outsourced solutions to provide cost-effective, value-added financial services tailored to your company's needs. Call CTBK at 716-630-2400. Again, 716-630-2400. Or go to ctbk.com to learn more about CTBK's outsourced solutions. Welcome to another edition of Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants. I'm Tim Graham of The Athletic, here with my co-host, Jonah Bronstein of the New Bronstein Times. We're going to be joined later on the podcast by Fred Segal. You know him as the man behind Freezing Cold Takes on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. 600,000 followers 7 years into his foray on Twitter. And Freezing Cold Takes, NFL, football media's most inaccurate predictions and the fascinating stories behind them, is a book that Fred Segal has put together that is on sale, and he's going to join the podcast and talk about the origins of his site and the inspiration to get into it, and how he puts together his Freezing Cold Takes. And I'm looking forward to that. Before we get to Fred, though, I want to talk about Saturday's game. The Bills' dramatic finish, winning the game against the Indianapolis Colts with a final second field goal, a chip shot, which I thought was a pretty great way, if you're a Bills fan, to end the game. It's even better than a touchdown. You wanted to see the punt god, Matt Araiza, in a clutch situation, make a nice hold, execute with the long snapper, Reed Ferguson, and Tyler Bass to make the kick, even though it was a chip shot. And I thought that was an ideal, if you could draw it up, a way for the Bills to grow as a team by winning in that fashion. Jonah, you were there. You were in the Bills in press conference room after. What was your takeaway from Saturday's game? I know it's an exhibition game, but I think we learned a lot.
Well, let me ask you this. Does this game crack your top 10 of all-time Bills victories?
No, I don't think so.
Like they did. No, I think you're right about Matt Araiza. He also had the 82-yard punt and held on another field goal. And maybe the concerns that he's not an experienced holder or can't perform that job are being alleviated and making it a little more fun to watch him, boom the ball 80-plus yards in this punting competition that's been brewing throughout camp. Well, my reaction, I kind of more wanted to ask your reaction because you reported on it more extensively, and we're talking to the Freezing Cold Takes author later today. Would it be a cold take to draw conclusions about the Bills' backup quarterback situation based on how poorly Case Keenum played and then Matt Barkley leading them down the field for that comeback victory?
Yeah, it's tricky. I think it is, and I think a lot of fans are. Case Keenum is by far a more accomplished quarterback than Matt Barkley in terms of experience, the type of situations that he has not only been in, but also won in, most notably with the Minnesota Vikings, but also he was a starting quarterback with Denver and Washington, knows the backup role, as does Matt Barkley. It's not like Matt Barkley thinks he's going to supplant Josh Allen or even Case Keenum. I don't think. Case Keenum is playing in his first game with an offensive coordinator who's never called plays before. And granted, the Bills' system is what it is. And Matt Barkley played in this system for 3 years. He knows the line checks. He knows what he needs to look for when he goes to the line of scrimmage and to check in and out of a play, or knows the terminology. And he's also going against the Colts' last string players. Case Keenum was going up against the Colts starting defense for a portion of the game. So I think you'd expect him to struggle when he's playing with Bills backups against NFL starters. The Colts are a pretty good team. I don't think that anybody's picking them to go to the Super Bowl this year, but their defense is respectable. And so That is what I wrote about. I had spoken before the game to Rick Spielman, the former Minnesota Vikings general manager, to ask him his thoughts on Case Keenum in a backup role. He likes it. He thinks that Case Keenum is in his prime as an NFL backup, 34 years old. Not a lot of wear on him. The ability to come in, and as I mentioned, he's been in these situations. The games shouldn't be too big for him. He played in the NFC Championship game for Minnesota, led them to didn't lead them because he was a game manager. They ran the ball and had a great defense. But
the Minneapolis Miracle.
Yeah, the Minneapolis Miracle with Stephon Diggs. So he's done it. Matt Barkley's never done it. And as great as he looked throwing to Quentin Morris and Isaiah Hodgins later in the game to move the Bills to that 17-point run that finishes off a comeback in the preseason. Yeah, it's fun. It was fun. And we have good thoughts about Matt Barkley. And there were highlight type plays as far as preseason goes. But Matt Barkley, to me, is destined for the practice squad. I don't think he's going to have any takers out there or anybody's going to swoop in and give him more of an opportunity than he's going to get as in a role with the Bills, where, when he signed, he knew he's here as what I like to call a stable goat. That's you got these racehorses. Sometimes they get too fidgety in their stalls and they'll put like a comfort animal in there with them. Sometimes it's a goat just to kind of keep them company. And I think that's what Matt Barkley is for Josh Allen. He's his little goat. And I think that Case Keenum is the guy that they need as for peace of mind and the insurance policy to be their backup. And hopefully you never see him. But if you do, and this is where I also interviewed Phil Simms, the former New York Giants quarterback, about his thoughts on Case Keenum in that role. And the quote was, "I would not want him to be my starting quarterback in the NFL, but I would love him as my backup." And I think that that's where Bills fans probably should be thinking, unless these next two games just turn out disastrous. And even then, even if these next two games are disastrous with Case Keenum, he's still learning it. Neither of these guys get any reps once the season starts. So it's not like Matt Barkley would be honing his game once September rolls around. Matt Barkley can run the scout team. Case Keenum can be the backup who studies back in the huddle during practices and gets his 2 reps or 3 reps, each day. And, anyways, I just don't, I'm not pushing the panic button on Case Keenum if I'm a Bills fan.
Well, right. You can't really draw too many conclusions from one preseason game, and maybe can't even draw many conclusions from all 3 of the preseason games if this trend continues with Matt Barkley outperforming Case Keenum. But I do think it's fair to say, I don't know if this is a hot or cold take, that this game illustrated how much of a downgrade the Bills have at backup quarterback now, going from Mitchell Trubisky, who is a starting quarterback in the NFL, to what they have now. And they didn't, not that you wanted Josh Allen to get hurt last year, but they didn't get the benefit of having a very good backup quarterback last year. Now they don't have it. And just because of the way things work out, luck and the way injuries tend to happen in the NFL, this might be the year where Josh Allen misses some time, or they need more from the backup quarterback, and they have less at that position.
We've already seen it in the preseason, examples of how Josh Allen can get hurt even if he takes care of himself. You had Jalen Hurts getting just tattooed by a Jets linebacker while running out of bounds. It was a late hit. It was dirty. And if Josh Allen does that and gets hurt, yes, Bills fans can be pissed off at the defender who suckered him, the dirty hit, but that doesn't bring him back. And if he gets into concussion protocol or has a shoulder injury, knocks his thumb,
hits a knuckle. Yeah, right.
Yeah, knocks his thumb on somebody's helmet who's blitzing up the middle. There's all kinds of things. And the Jets dodged a bullet with Zach Wilson. He was on a run, a non-contact injury to his knee. Looked like he might be done for the season, or at least those doctor experts who like to diagnose injuries from television were saying, "Oh, that's a season ender." They dodged a bullet. He's only going to be out a few weeks. But those are all the types of things that Josh Allen can have happen to him. And a story I'm working on, there's a Hall of Fame quarterback who says it will happen. He's like, nobody gets out of it. It will happen. He's going to get hurt. Whether it's just about whether he's out for 2 weeks or 12 or a season. I mean, it'll happen. And he takes a lot of shots. I think the only way, Jonah, to be able to tell what the Bills have with their backup quarterback is if he plays with the starting unit. If he's throwing to Stephon Diggs and Dawson Knox and handing off to Singletary and Cook and taking snaps from Mitch Morse and Deion Dawkins is left tackle and Spencer Brown's the right, that whole thing. Roger Saffold, getting him back in the mix. He was a big offseason acquisition. So Case Keenum,
at least
Case Keenum behind a crumbling offensive line, or at least a backup offensive line, doesn't teach me anything.
What do you think about the Bills sitting every starter? And I think 33 players in total. And if that continues, I mean, should they get Case Keenum some reps with the starters and get some more continuity going with this offensive line and things in these final 2 preseason games?
Well, I think the offensive line needs it, regardless, whether it's in front of Matt Barkley, Josh Allen, or Case Keenum. I think the offensive line needs its reps against a live NFL opponent. And not just the defenders in practice at half speed or whatever. So, they need to do some run blocking. They need to do some of those things. That's just the nature of that unit. Once they're all healthy. Yeah, I think that is important over these next 2 games. But I don't think it's important for Josh Allen. I don't think it's important for Jordan Poyer. I mean, there are guys who you can just count on. Yeah, maybe from rust or something. I don't know. You want to give a couple of series. I don't know. I just think that the preseason is too risky for a team that is established. You have the New York Giants, and I've been following them, of course, because we're tracking all the former Bills who work for that organization now as both coaches in the front office and players. And Brian Daboll, that's a big part of his philosophy in this preseason is getting his starters reps. This is a team that is building. They need it. That's way more important to a team like the Giants than it is to the Bills. They know it's the same offense. Ken Dorsey can find his rhythm, getting the plays into Case Keenum as easily as to Josh Allen, I think, because of the cadence and all that type of stuff. The play clock is still the play clock, regardless of who the quarterback is out there. So I think that there are some things that are more important for different people within the organization, but as a whole, I don't think that the Bills starters need this preseason that much.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But I do wonder if some of the players need to play alongside Josh Allen or alongside Jordan Poyer, some of the new players, especially the younger players and the rookies. And maybe they can get that in practice settings.
Yeah.
But I think that
the
helps.
Young cornerbacks, those 6th round picks, guys who just don't have a lot of experience, Christian Bedford and Kaiir Elam, who both played well against Super Bowl quarterbacks. Matt Ryan played, former MVP, who played in the Super Bowl. Nick Foles won a Super Bowl. So, yeah, even though, like I said, the Colts aren't favorites to win the Lombardi, but these young, I said 6th round picks. I'm sorry. I'm getting my safeties. The 2 safeties are both 6th round picks. I'm sorry. But Bedford is a 6th round pick and Elam, of course, the 1st round pick. I think they showed very well against veteran NFL quarterbacks.
And speaking of 6th round picks, Sam Ehlinger lit the Bills up.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Well, that's what happens in the preseason. That's why you get these preseason heroes who everybody falls in love with, like Christian Wade. Nobody has signed Christian Wade. He's not in the NFL anywhere, but there were people who would see him break these runs in the 4th quarter of preseason games and say, man, he's got to make the roster. And here he is not making 32 rosters. Anything else going on, Jonah, before we get to Fred Segal, or do we want to just jump right to Fred?
Why don't we get right into Fred, jump right into the cold water?
Okay.
Wait, before we do that, I want your take on the halftime meal at the Bills' first preseason game.
I didn't eat. I was writing because I was writing about Case Keenum. I could get started. I knew he was out of the game. by then. And so I actually just wrote. I did not. What did they even? I heard some grumblings or some mumblings, I should say, not grumblings, because I don't think it was. I don't think it was necessarily negative, but people were wondering what it was.
Yeah, I mean, I got that too. I mean, it was pretty obvious. I thought that it was calamari, and everybody was wondering if it was onion rings, and that there was a lot of confusion because it wasn't labeled, I guess. But I thought there was a lot of effort to put out a nice meal. And as we talked about in past weeks, there's no expectation that they have to feed us well. But compared with some of the box lunches and the food we got in the past, it didn't seem to cause widespread illness and ill feelings as we'd experienced much of the time last year.
You mean ill will, not illness. I don't think anybody was getting sick.
Both. I feel like there was a little bit of that last year.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think we discussed that. I don't know if we discussed it on the air or off about it was the COVID aspect of it. There was no communal buffet style. You go through and you scoop up. They were trying to eliminate touching of the utensils repeatedly. So they would put little things in boxes. And sometimes, they would, by halftime, whatever it was that was in this box would be stuck to the cardboard, whether it be a pizza log or tenders or whatever. It was not optimal.
Right. I suspected that these things were put in the boxes on Tuesday or Wednesday and left sitting out there waiting for us on Sunday.
Brussels sprouts in the pregame portion of the meal. I don't think I've ever been served Brussels sprouts in an NFL press box. I think that they should be lauded for their effort. This is not typical stadium fare. And
it was a nice comeback. I do wonder if maybe they listened to this podcast and heard that the Patriot reporters in the Bills' last home playoff game called it the worst press box meal in the league.
I know it's just the preseason, but I wonder if the role as Super Bowl favorites, all these primetime games, you're going to have national media at these games on a weekly basis. I'm talking about the Peter Kings or whomever, the NFL Network people. Yes, those reporters are there, but you're going to have maybe a Washington Post reporter or an LA Times reporter attending games in Orchard Park because they're writing a feature about these Bills, the Chicago Tribune, etc. The Mike Sandos and Dan Pompei's at the Athletic, those types. So maybe there's a feeling like, all right, let's show out a little bit here. Just like Christian Bedford.
Sounds good.
No.
And I just thought of something. I wanted to make a quick mention. I don't know if you saw this. Former Niagara baseball player Wynton Bernard made his major league debut with the Colorado Rockies over the weekend. He had been in the minors for 10 years and got into his first baseball game and got a hit. And, I don't know if there's a lot of local college baseball fans, but there probably are a lot of people that watch baseball. And I thought that was kind of a neat little story.
Where's he from originally, Jonah?
He's not from Western New York. Let me look that up really quick. But he played at Niagara, obviously more than 10 years ago, and he was a good player for them, stole a lot of bases, and has had a good minor league career, but this was his first time playing in the major leagues. And his hometown is San Diego, California.
Yeah, that's not near here.
He played some junior college baseball in Riverside Community College before coming to Niagara. But I remember covering him at Niagara. He was a very good player there, and then had seen him having – you see this a lot with local players, either the ones that grow up here or play college baseball here, where they have good minor league careers, but and sometimes they crack into the majors, but does seem kind of rare that the local baseball players in the Northeast in general kind of make it to the highest levels of the show.
Right. Oh, that's pretty cool. No, I didn't know that. Thanks for bringing it up. All right, let's go to maybe Fred Segal has something about him and somebody tweeted this guy will never make it.
Yeah, I probably wrote in the Niagara Gazette, this guy's not a major league player and he'll never be in it.
All right, but right after this, we're going to hear from Fred Segal of Freezing Cold Takes here on Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants. CTBK is more than just a full-service accounting firm. They are one team with an innovative approach to accounting and rise to each new challenge with collaborative problem-solving skills. CTBK goes above and beyond by lending helping hands in the Buffalo and Niagara community through volunteer work and donations, and is partnered up with Victory Sports for 2020 and 2021 to keep kids in the community active. The professionals at CTBK are determined to help individuals and businesses succeed. Whether a large corporation, a small business, or somewhere in between, call CTBK at 716-630-2400. Again, 716-630-2400, and see what CTBK's one team approach can do for you. On this episode, we are going to cryogenically immerse ourselves in the freezingest and the coldest takes as we have Fred Segal at Old Takes Exposed. You probably know it better by its mainstream phrase, freezing cold takes. Fred Segal joining us from Coral Springs, Florida. Thank you, Fred.
Well, no, now I'm in West Palm. I was in Coral Springs. Yeah, not a big deal. But,
all right. No, that's why. Well,
Beach,
I'm a former Palm Beach Post reporter of the Miami Dolphins.
all right.
And a former resident of Coral Springs, Florida.
Nice. Good town. Good town.
I would not have wanted to drive that distance every day.
No.
The distance isn't so bad as much as the South Florida traffic.
When I was working as an attorney, I used to work in Miami, and my wife used to work in West Palm. And we lived in Coral Springs for that reason. We both drove an hour a day. It was terrible.
Well, I'm glad that you're able to consolidate. And you are not an attorney, full-time attorney anymore. You are full-time freezing cold takes. Is that right?
Full-time freezing cold takes. But also I do a lot of other things. It's a hustle. I just hustle. I do a lot of other things, social media related. I have side projects, social media related, that are boring to discuss, but let's just say it had nothing to do with cold takes.
It is a empire that you're building, really. And the reason we have Fred on is to discuss his new book, Freezing Cold Takes NFL, football media's most inaccurate predictions and the fascinating stories behind them. Available where all books are sold. Borders, Barnes & Noble for our Canadian friends, Chapters, Amazon.com, you name it. This is a book that's going to be all over the shelves. And a lot of Buffalo Bills references in it, a lot of context, and a lot of AFC East, of course. And I'll just give a quick overview before we get into it. But I'm really fascinated by the sequence of events in which are discussed in full in chapters. These aren't just references, but it is the Steelers being fools to stick with Bill Cowher over Tom Donahoe. Tom Donahoe then goes to the Buffalo Bills and how awesome that is going to be. Former Buffalo News reporter Tim Graham is mentioned in a footnote, not a freezing cold take, but I'm in a footnote. And then how stupid are the Patriots to trade Drew Bledsoe within the division, and the Bills really got one over. And so the Patriots are stupid, and Tom Donahoe and Drew Bledsoe, and it's amazing. I guess there are so many different ways you could have gone with this book. And I know that a lot ended up on the cutting room floor. How did you condense it? How did you decide what of the purest cold takes you were going to include?
Well, I didn't do a lot of like recent stuff because everybody's careers are so small. First of all, second of all, like Josh Allen's a great topic for Buffalo, but I was like halfway into the book when he broke out. Like when I first started writing the book, he hadn't broken out into being a star yet. He was like still had potential, and stuff like that. So it's not really recent stuff so much. I have a chapter on the draft where I just list draft takes. It's really the only chapter where it's really extension of my feed, but that has more recent stuff, some of it. But otherwise, I kept it to stuff that was already kind of concluded. And I just try to do it the best, the stories that people would think the most interesting out of all the ones that I did. I did like 4 or 5 that I cut. So I could do a volume 2 easily. But so it was hard to figure out which ones to put. I thought people that teams and people that would recognize, the 49ers from the past, the Cowboys from the past, 90s Cowboys, 80s 49ers, the old Steelers teams from the 90s, and 2000s when they eventually won the Super Bowl. And, teams like that. The Patriots, of course, have a lot of material for them. I had to cut some of that material out, but there's still so much on them. And then Buffalo's involved heavily with a lot of them, especially the Patriots one.
And Bruce Smith makes a nice appearance, courtesy of maybe
Bruce
one
was
of the
the
most
greatest.
respected NFL
I couldn't stop
draft
laughing
picks,
at that
Bushbun.
one. That was so funny. I couldn't believe it. I think it was one of those guys, a draft guy. He was one of the non-draft guys. And he said he was doing a thing on an article that appeared in like many local papers. It said the worst pick and the best pick of each team's draft. And in 85, he said the worst pick the Bills had in 85, Bruce Smith, #1 overall pick, because he's lazy, happy-go-lucky, and likes to eat.
Fantastic stuff. Yeah, we don't want to give away all the morsels. We want people to go out there and buy the book. And I'll be honest, what I did when I got the PDF version was I just did a Control F for Buffalo, and I wanted to see which reporters made the cut or missed out on the cut. And there are some familiar names in there, quite a few of them, by the way, in the Buffalo media who got tagged for their freezing cold takes.
What's the guy's name? He's Big Buffalo. Sal something.
Sal Majorana.
Yeah, Sal Majorana. Yeah, he's. I get tagged to his posts sometimes for my feed, but I remembered him. But yeah, he was big on making fun of Belichick for trading Bledsoe within the division. Right.
No, the other day at the game, Tim mentioned to Sale that he appears in the book a couple times and brought up a few of the instances, and Sale's first response was, "Those weren't cold takes." So sticking to them.
But he also has a partner in crime in one of his particular cold takes, in which he's joined by a friend of the show. He is an all-time F on TGAF, Bucky Gleason. So he's got company. What's the response that you've gotten over the years, Fred? Because I remember I was very early on the freezing cold takes train. I was an early follower, and it seems as though the defense mechanisms have dropped or fallen by the wayside. It has gone from being an insult to be on freezing cold takes to almost a badge of honor now. It seems as though reporters are having more fun with it than they did in 2015 or 2016 in the early stages of the Twitter feed.
Yeah, well, I think you guys, reporters realized pretty quickly, and when I first started it, they would get mad, a lot of them, but I think they realized pretty quickly that it's rarely a good look. It's rarely a good look to complain about it. Now, sometimes people have arguments about whether it is or is not a cold take, and they occasionally have a point, but I think for the most part, it's not a good look. So I think eventually you realize, okay, this isn't really that big of a deal. It's fine. I'm going to make fun of it myself. I think what annoys reporters more is when they get tagged to me. When I get tagged on anything they say that is even remotely predictive or provocative, I'll get tagged 50 times under that, the moment they tweet it. I think that annoys them more than the actual posting of the old post. I think reporters, when you guys say something that's like a hot take type thing on Twitter, I feel as if, and I could be wrong, you get more heat when you post it than after it's wrong. Because when you post it, people can still argue about it. They could still tell you how stupid you are. Like both people who agree with it and people who don't agree with it, or like things like that. Now, when it's wrong, there's nothing else but to just make fun of you. But it's much more of a debate when it's first posted.
Well, I'll tell you this, Fred. I think that freezing cold takes has had an impact on the way I report somewhat. I mean, I'm a little bit of a different reporter, as people who follow this podcast know. I'm more of a feature takeout guy. I've never been a hot take guy. I've never done a mock draft in my life, and I never will. That's like a source of pride. But when I was at ESPN, we had to make predictions.
Oh, yeah.
And it was something that Paul Kaharski in Nashville, and he and I would talk about all the time. We would complain ESPN is making us predict the games. They'd make us pick winners, all this type of stuff. And we didn't like it because that's just not my comfort zone. I'm the type of guy that I like to put out information that is backed by expert opinion, or I quote somebody who has to say something. I never wanted to lead with my chin as much as I was forced to. But I'll tell you this, even in the Twitter sphere, I would occasionally throw out what I thought was an opinion, and I will have Fred Segal in the back of my mind. And I just got out of the habit. Like, I'm not going to, I don't, why, and why should I? I mean, it really, what Freezing Cold Takes does, I think more than anything else on a tweet by tweet basis, as entertaining as each tweet is, it really pops that balloon of how silly some of this is, and content for content's sake that we see in the media, that they're saying things just to be said. They're not saying things because they have to be said. They're saying things just because. And I think it allows some discerning, the audience to be more discerning in how they want to gather their material, their content, their information.
No, I agree. But I think in terms of, like, it depends on what you want to do. I mean, if you're a features writer, you don't have to do that. If you're a reporter back previously, when it was, like when people relied so much on the ESPN.com reporting, as opposed to just Twitter these days, it was something you could do. But if you're going on TV and being the guy on the studio show or the morning show on ESPN, you probably have to do that. You have to yell out all these opinions, or else you won't be on the show. So it depends on what you want to do, I guess. I mean, like, I would never want to make opinions. I'm not opinions, predictions in NFL, especially NFL. NFL is like the most unpredictable thing. Inferior teams beat better teams all the time in the NFL in the regular season. All the time. The Bills lost the freaking Jaguars this last year. I mean, it's like you never know.
Urban Meyer beat the Bills.
What?
I just like to reduce that.
Yeah,
So it's worse than the Jacksonville Jaguars winning.
You never could expect anything. I remember it was I just remember it specifically because Kyle Brandt from the NFL Network wrote that it's a bye month for the Bills. They were playing really bad teams that month, and the first game they played was against Jacksonville, and they lost for no reason whatsoever. And nobody believed that they were done either. Like, it's like the NFL is so weird like that. So why would you even want to predict games in the NFL? Impossible. Good luck gambling on that sport. I mean, geez. But yeah. So I would think that some people do it, but then some people are just happy for the attention, even if they're wrong. Some people think like you, and then some people are happy for the attention if they're wrong. I try to stay away from those people. But I mean, the fans like it, and occasionally I'll post them.
Fred, what inspired you or got you started in, jumping into the freezing cold water and looking for these takes, and how did you get to become the freezing cold takes guy?
Well, I started it like as a counter to sports media folks who reposting their accurate predictions and then posting self-congratulatory messages. I was just a regular Twitter user. I figured someone should be the person to repost the tweets and the quotes where some of those same media people, they turn out to be wrong. And I guess I just became that person. I didn't expect it to become big, but it did. And eventually it allowed me to write this book, which was like something I really wanted to do from one of the beginning times I started the feed.
And what's kind of the process like of cataloging these takes and searching for them and finding the cold takes versus the accurate takes?
The cataloging, I don't catalog very much. People, that's kind of like a myth. I perpetuate it sometimes just for fun, but it's not really what I do. I kind of look at them when the time arises. I have a legal background. I was a lawyer for 8 years, and I used to search case law on these websites called LexisNexis and Westlaw. They used to have all these case law. You look to help your case, and you have to find all these search terms. You look up dates and different search terms and from different periods. And the Twitter, I don't think people realized at the time how easy it was, or not easy, but just how good the technology was on Twitter to be able to search for old posts. And this was like in 2015. So I figured that once I started searching, I realized it was the same as like the search terms in Westlaw. I was very good at it. I used to do it every day. And I would just find them, like go back, find dates when things happen and be able to find the quotes. Like when a coach is hired, like when Rex Ryan was hired by the Bills.
I thought it was great.
You searched
you would have gotten me. You would have gotten me on that one. I was a huge fan of that hire. I thought he was exactly what they needed. That they needed a motivator to get him over the hump.
Yeah, especially the day. And you look up games where like they had. I think they started off really well. So you look at when they were at their highest level, the record. There was at the highest level. You go to their schedule. You look at the game they won to become their best record in the season. Then you type in Rex Ryan. And you look up the record, you look up Rex Ryan, that date, and then you kind of condense it, filter it so it's just blue checks, and it's just like a whirlwind. It's just like a load of takes. Rex Ryan's the best. Rex Ryan, what a hire. Rex Ryan, so easy. And then now everybody just sends me stuff. So some of the stuff I probably would never have found, people just send me. And everybody remembers what you guys said. So...
especially people who don't like us. Do you ever find common threads in that?
Oh yeah.
There's a competitor, like somebody who just doesn't like another reporter on the beat, and they're like, "Hey, you might want to consider including this one." Bias
stuff, puff piece type thing. Carrying the water is a big one.
Right.
The guy tag, and then Underwood. I'll get all the commentary about how this journalist carries the water for this team or this coach. And stuff like that, of course. But especially guys who don't like it, remember everything you say. You guys, as journalists, you write like 7 articles a week of 500 to 1,000 words at least, or your features column's probably like 2,000 words. You don't remember what you wrote last week, but guy who hates you remembers that same thing you wrote for months, years, maybe. And they'll send it to me the second it's wrong. And it's just not just Buffalo. It's Iowa football, Louisiana Tech baseball, college stuff, Vancouver Canucks, anybody. Like, it's any team. Like, I just can tell how passionate these fans are about any other team. It's like crazy. So that's how I get all the stuff.
So you decided to go with an NFL edition of Freezing Cold Takes. Let me give that name of that book again one more time. Well, I'll give it a couple more times. Freezing Cold Takes, NFL Football Media's Most Inaccurate Predictions and the Fascinating Stories Behind Them. Available where all books are sold. You decided to do an NFL edition here. Does that mean that you're working on another sport right now?
Well,
or are we going to wait and see how well this does?
Well, yeah, obviously I would have to be able to have the publisher or any publisher want to do another one, but that was the plan from the beginning. I was going to do all sports, but I decided to let's pick NFL. I have so many, and it's real popular sports, so let's pick that one first, and then you could do more. I could do NBA. I could do a volume 2 for this easily, because I had a max word requirement for this book, so I couldn't do everything I wanted to do in one book. I had a great chapter I cut from 2017 Eagles. And I think now I could probably do a whole chapter on Josh Allen. Josh Allen's one of the most fascinating guys. He's like one of those guys. He's the enigma guy who has a lot of talent, who just gets so many hot takes. And when he was drafted,
yes.
The moment he was drafted until he broke out to being a star. I mean, when he first started, he had games that people made fun of. He was like choppy, just like any other rookie should be. But the talent was always there. But he's like one of those guys. He's like the prototypical guy like that. I could have a chapter on guys like that.
Are you familiar with Ryan Gates? and maybe the situation, you'll be reminded of him more so than just the name. Ryan Gates worked for WGR 550 here in Buffalo, and I admire him for this. And I had a chance to tell him this in person. And I think I'm paraphrasing. I don't know the exact how it happened, but he said if the Bills draft Josh Allen, he would quit. Now you have all these radio people who will threaten to do whatever, or and then they back out of it, or they come up with a compromise of, doing it, like I'll eat my hat. And then they come in with a chocolate hat or something, whatever they do, they do something different. Well, he quit, and he said, I'm a man of my word, and I quit. And then this was even before Josh Allen was good. Right. So I think that Ryan Gates deserves a little bit of maybe reverse freezing cold take love.
Yeah. Where is he at now?
He's not in the business. He's out of the sports radio business. I've tried to urge him to get back into it because I think that it's more credibility. I think he's done his time.
Maybe he didn't like it that much. He wanted to quit. He was looking for a reason.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. But there's no consideration for any of those. I mean, my legal terms for any of these types of things that you say, like I'll quit but like it's a really stupid thing to say because you have to quit and then you don't get anything if they don't pick him.
That's right.
In return, like there's no, you don't get anything in return for that. What do you get if they don't pick Josh Allen? If I was him. So, but yeah, I mean, that's a great one. Nobody ever does it. Maybe I'll eat the take, and there's a piece of paper of the take and someone's eating the piece of paper. I've seen that before. Right.
Well, my co-host Jonah Bronstein, I think, even if he didn't want to fall on his sword, I'm going to force him onto it. While you were talking, he brought up one of his own freezing cold takes. He sent it to me as a reminder. He says, and so maybe this could start your chapter on Josh Allen, because this is the first seed that if this doesn't happen, maybe it's the first domino or the butterfly effect. But Jonah Bronstein said, if the Bills fans wanted wholesale changes, Trump and Bon Jovi were the horses to back. Status quo is what they wish for and received. The Pagulas.
Yeah, I went looking for that. And I thought the take was stronger than that because I was really thinking that,
you were leading with
Trump
your chin? Was
the best possible ownership situation for the Bills at a certain point in time.
One thing we do know, if there was Donald Trump as the owner, that it would be tough for the coach.
It might have saved the country.
Yeah, it would be tough for whoever was the coach. I'll tell you that.
I thought he'd do something bold, like hire
that any game lost would be solely his fault.
Yeah, he tried to out Steinbrenner. Fred, has there ever been consideration, and maybe you've done this in a different way, but I like the ceremonial aspect of this, retiring jerseys. Let's retire, because you can go Steph Curry all day, every day. You can go Tom Brady all day, every day. Do you have is there a Mount Rushmore is maybe too limited, but do you have, if it were go up into the Segal rafters, who would be your
amount of subjects, like of individuals?
Well, subjects are, like the draft, coaching changes. There are like these general
concepts. You mean like the individual athlete?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a tough question.
Are there guys you just stay away from because they just get too redundant?
Well, there's guys like Johnny Manziel, who for a long time I kind of just got over that one, but you can bring them back every so often. There's NFL players who were universally believed to be great that didn't do well. I think the number one example of that, Johnny Manziel is not the number one example because there were people who were skeptical of him. The number one example of universal player who had universal love, who completely flopped, was Trent Richardson for Alabama. The running back for Alabama who got picked by Cleveland. You can't find a person who didn't think he was going to be good. Maybe Jim Brown, because it's obvious he was jealous.
I can't remember. There was one, that was one of the takes was we're looking at the best running back since Jim Brown in Cleveland was one of the
Jim
takes.
Brown did not like that. So he
And there was another one that was from a national NFL voice who said something along the lines of, just imagine Trent Richardson and Brandon Weeden in the same backfield.
Yeah, that's pretty freaking cool. Stu Mandel said that.
That's right.
Yeah. He was a college guy. He was just so excited to see
unbelievable
great college players in the same backfield. It's going to be so great. So cool. Yeah. That one. Right. Brandon Weeden, they picked 2 in that same first round, and it was a great first round for them in that draft, supposedly. And then they traded Richardson for a first round pick. And everybody thought that Indianapolis gave up a first round pick for Trent Richardson, and people were just going off on the Browns like they got ripped off. It was
my favorite, one of my favorite bits that you do. I think it makes me laugh more than the takes, is when you use the I'm writing this down emoji. I'm not sure what that's called, but like, let's put this down for posterity. Is there one that you're looking forward to the payoff?
Well, there's ones where I root for the payoff, and there's 2 already this year, and one I root for thoroughly, and then one I'm not rooting for because they're in the division. I'm a huge Dolphins guy, and it's Tua. Tua's the ultimate one right now because there are so many things said about him that are bad, but now it's the same. Like the Dolphins go through this period where you guys are lucky. The Bills have somehow broke through in becoming good again. We've been waiting for so long with the Dolphins, but Tua, every year the person in the tryout in the training camp, they're doing great. This year is even more, where everyone's talking about Tua is doing great, but before that, all the stuff on Tua has been so poor that if he's good, it's going to be great. Now, also the Patriots offense right now is a huge topic. Like the Patriots offense is so bad. There's all these alleged poor, the coaching staff's in flux and they don't have a real offensive coordinator. That would be a good one to post too, because everyone's really down on them now. I've seen so much media really going down on them, and then being down on them, and then so that one. But I'm not rooting for that because I don't.
Maybe a little of both.
I don't want the Patriots offense to be good. It was already hard enough last year with the Patriots and the Bills now in the division. That division's only suited for one good team. Like Patriots were for a long time. Now Buffalo's turn, right? So those are the 2.
Perhaps for a long time. I think that there are Bills fans who believe they're owed a long run.
We're owed a long run too as Dolphins fans. Where's our run?
The Patriots almost won the division again last year.
I know. Well, that was a great one. That was a great cold take thing. After the Patriots won that game, was it in Buffalo or is it home?
And dominated them in Orchard Park. Yeah, that was the.
Yeah, it was a game where they didn't pass because they were afraid to pass because the weather was really bad, and they won, and it was just the narrative was completely just Belichick, just master versus fraud McDermott, fake Belichick.
Yeah.
That was it. And then all those posts. And then of course the recency bias from the media after that was Patriots are going to win the division. Buffalo, it was especially those stupid shows the day after, the debate shows. But when the playoffs came around, it was open season because that was just dominance, the playoffs. It was open season. Now, another great one, which you guys won't like, is when Josh Allen threw I've used this as an example of in-game freezing cold take posts, like when Josh Allen threw the touchdown with 13 seconds left in the division.
Oh, right.
Right. That's where, now when you talk about accumulation, that's where I start bookmarking. I don't care what the situation is. I have predisposed already. I'm trained to bookmark. So I'll start bookmarking the second he throws the touchdown.
You're watching the game.
I'm watching the game. Josh Allen throws a touchdown. The 13 seconds left, I'm automatically bookmarking.
Yeah.
Like bookmarking, everybody's saying the page that Buffalo is going to win. Even though I personally think that there's no way the Chiefs are going to come back, I just do it anyway.
Or halftime of the Chiefs-Bengals game.
Right. That's a good one, too.
That had to be a big one.
That was a good one, too. Yeah. Chiefs-Bengals game, too. Yeah. The in-game ones are really good. Super Bowl 28-3 is obviously the ultimate one. I don't think there was bookmarking at the time. It was even a thing you could do on Twitter. But I would have to cut and paste then. So, but yeah, it's part of the process.
So is the lesson here that media members like myself and Tim should try to avoid being on freezing cold takes, or is it just all part of the game that we should put our takes out there and let the universe decide whether they're hot or cold?
I don't necessarily think that you should do anything. I think if it's a big part of what you do, I don't think you should stop doing it because of me, because it doesn't matter. No one's ever been fired. No one's ever had anything bad happen to them in their career because of it. So, but I think like if you're not necessarily the type of person who posts things and doesn't really want to deal with the annoyance that comes afterwards, then yeah, maybe you should avoid it, because it keeps going for years. People will post, if you post a draft take that's wrong, like a Josh Allen take, then people will tweet you to that take like 3 years later and go, "What do you think now, Tim Graham?" Even though you've addressed it like 6 times. Yeah.
Right. I wrote a story calling myself a moron. I am stupid. You are smart. I am ugly. You are beautiful.
Yeah,
they'll still go after you.
Yeah, that.
Fred, thank you so much for this. Let me give all the plugs again. You can follow Fred Segal of Freezing Cold Takes at Old Takes Exposed on Twitter, where he has accumulated almost 600,000 followers. There also is a Facebook page and an Instagram, but those are a little different names. Right? They're not Old Takes Exposed. They're just at Freezing Cold Takes, but on Twitter, it's Old Takes Exposed. And buy the book, regardless whether you're a Bills fan or not. But there is just an abundance of Bills and AFC East material in Freezing Cold Takes NFL, football media's most inaccurate predictions and the fascinating stories behind them. On sale wherever books are sold, Amazon.com, Borders, Chapters, Barnes & Noble, you name it. Walden Books, if there's still one around. I don't know if they're like the Blockbuster. Is the Walden Books still out there? Great
Mall bookstore. No, I don't know. But you can order it. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any of those places, and probably in the bookstore. I mean, I've seen it in my bookstore. So.
Oh, what's the name of the one in the airport? Something H.W. Smith or something.
Hudson News? Maybe that's just the New York airport.
Now, anyways, buy it. Buy the damn book.
Yeah, please.
Fred Segal from West Palm Beach, not from Coral Springs. I want to make that correction again. I don't want to be on Freezing Cold Takes just because I got your
North Miami native.
South Florida is best. All right, Fred, thank you for joining and giving your insight on the book. And we'll be following you along for forever.
All right, as long as you keep doing this,
we'll be following.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.